Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches. Today I will be talking about the renowned 1948 Western morality tale, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And the film is set in Mexico, 1925. Fred Dobbs is a broke American drifter reduced to begging strangers for the price of a meal. Not that he ever actually seems to use the money for food, mind you. He prefers to spend it on getting a shave or buying a packet of cigarettes or even a share in a lottery ticket. How long Dobbs could keep scratching along like this is unclear, but by an apparent stroke of luck, it seems he won't have to. He and another drifter, Bob Curtin, land jobs building oil derricks for $8 a day, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but given that this was a time when a loaf of bread might cost 10 cents, it sounds like a fortune to Dobbs. Now, actually getting the promised money turns out to be more trouble than expected, but Dobbs isn't afraid to physically fight to get his promised reward. With that cash plus a windfall lottery win, it turns out that share in a ticket was a good investment after all. Dobbs and Curtin have enough money for supplies to go gold prospecting. Now, neither man has any experience in this field, but they have befriended a retired miner named Howard, who agrees to join the expedition, providing them with his expertise in exchange for a share of any gold they find. The first expertise that Howard provides is a series of warnings. The work is hard and the conditions are dangerous. Sunstroke, thirst, hunger, bandits, all of these are real threats to life and livelihood. And after all that, they may find no gold. Or you might find plenty, which Howard reckons is the greatest peril of all, a claim which Dobbs loudly scoffs at. But as the events of the expedition will soon prove, Howard knows what he's talking about. Treasure of the Sierra Madre was an early Hollywood film to include locations shooting outside the United States, which may have contributed to the film's budget problems. The cost overruns apparently led studio boss Jack Warner to exclaim, "They're looking for gold, all right! Mine!" With a final cost of around $3 million at the time, the film was one of the year's most expensive and failed to be commercially profitable in its original release. It did win huge critical acclaim, however, including the Academy Awards for Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Screenplay. It was also nominated for Best Picture, losing to Laurence Olivier's Hamlet, while the Academy's decision not to nominate leading man Humphrey Bogart was controversial at the time and has largely been condemned in the decades since. Those decades have done nothing to diminish the film's reputation. It's one of the very few releases with a 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The American Film Institute's 2007 list of the top 100 films of all time put the movie at number 38. It has been chosen for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So when I say that I'm not a fan, I'm definitely swimming against a stream of consensus. So I guess I'd better explain myself. And my first problem is subtlety. The film doesn't have any. I probably don't need to define what foreshadowing is, but just in case, it's a narrative technique in which suggestions or hints of upcoming plot developments are slipped into the story. To take a simple example, in the second Jurassic Park film, Ian Malcolm has a brief conversation with his daughter Kelly about her being on the school gymnastics team, which sets up a later scene where Kelly fights off a velociraptor using her gymnastic skills. Properly executed, foreshadowing is something that pays off in hindsight. That moment of clarity where you go, oh, that's right. Earlier, that guy joked about how he couldn't be trusted, and now he's just betrayed them. That was foreshadowing. The Treasure of Sierra Madre doesn't have properly executed foreshadowing. Instead, it has what I call foreshouting, which is when a narrative so heavily belabors its foreshadowing that it's immediately apparent well in advance what is going to happen. In this case, what's being foreshadowed is not just a single event, but the whole main theme of the film. The result was that by the end of the first act, I knew exactly what would happen in the rest of the movie. Not every specific detail, of course, but the entire structure of the narrative was immediately apparent, which considerably diminished my engagement because I'm like, well, why am I watching the rest of the movie? I know what's going to happen. The lack of subtlety is not just limited to the foreshadowing, though. The script is ponderous and didactic throughout, leadenly belaboring both its primary theme and the individual events that contribute to that theme. That main theme, for the record, is the destructive toxicity of greed. That's a theme for which I actually have a lot of sympathy. It's pretty clear that greed is a very destructive force in the world. You only have to look at our collective failure to deal with climate change, because it might cost more in the short term to do so, as an example of that. And I'll give the film some credit. It's a fairly brave theme to tackle because you're having to point fingers generally at the people who have stuff, because that's where the greed is. Unfortunately, I think the film tackles this badly for two main reasons. The first is that the people in the film who are most corrupted by their greed for gold were already pretty toxic to begin with. which confuses the message. Is wealth the problem or greed? Does wealth inspire greater build, or were these people just bad to begin with? The second issue is the script is never simply willing to trust that its audience understood what they just saw and let them find that somewhat moral theme for themselves. Instead, it constantly reiterates, recaps, and reemphasizes what has gone before. It's the kind of morality play story. It's not enough to see one person brought low by the greed. You've got to see it happen again and again and again, preferably with some kind of blatant in character exposition about it happening. The result is stilted and almost lectury at times, and yet it still manages to be not terribly clear. The movie does have its good points, of course. The performances are solid, as you might expect, given the cast, and there are some pretty good snippets of dialogue in amidst all the heavy handed messaging. Ironically, though, much like James T. Kirk never actually said, "Beam me up, Scotty," the most famous line commonly attributed to this film is not actually delivered within it. "We don't need no stinking badges," actually comes from Blazing Saddles. The line that is delivered in this movie is, "Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges." And you may be thinking, well, thanks for the anecdote, but that doesn't seem to have much bearing on the film's quality. And you'd be right. But honestly, I'm worried that if I went on to my next complaint, the movie is much too long for the story it has to tell, I'd be at risk of belaboring my point just as much as I've accused this film of doing. So instead, I'll end with my usual warning that applies to all films of this vintage. If you do sit down to watch this, be prepared for some distinctly regressive 1940s attitudes towards race and gender. You know, it was the time. They say some things that wouldn't fly today and shouldn't fly today. Next time, oh, great American multitude and sports fans everywhere. Next time, we inaugurate the 20th annual Transcontinental Road Race. Next time, the 5 bravest young men and women in this greatest of nations will risk their lives in the greatest sporting event since the days of Spartacus. Because it's finally time to tackle the glorious madness that is Death Race 2000. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've seen this film, let me know what you thought of it.